Hello again, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us for this Friday's edition of Alaska Weather. I'm meteorologist Dave Percy, and I'll be hosting today's show. Up first, hazardous weather graphic again, and all the storminess out here continues to lead to winter weather advisories tonight into tomorrow here for the Yukon Delta, Eastern Norton Sound, and Lotto Hills. And then the winter storm warning continues here, St. Lawrence Island, Seward Peninsula, and on up the coastline there to actually the Noatak Valley and the Kobuk Valley, as well as Kotzebue Sound, Selawik, on up Kivalina, and Point Hope, possibly Cape Lisburne. Winter storm warnings continue tonight into tomorrow and possibly longer. Actually, I believe through Sunday this will be out as a series of storms continue to roll northward through the Bering Sea and then kind of take a turn into the northeast here. And there are also winter weather advisories out tonight and Saturday here for the northeastern Brooks Range for windy conditions, winds 40 miles an hour, 40 to 45 in gusts, possibly with snow, mostly blowing snow, reducing visibilities to half mile or less in some areas. And those same conditions exist here for the Yukon Delta and Eastern Norton Sound, while we're looking at areas of whiteout conditions with the strong winds here, St. Lawrence Island up across Seward Peninsula into the northwest. And rolling back again, it's a high wind warning out through tonight and at least through noon Saturday for the Juneau-Douglas area for north-northeast winds, continuing to gust as high as 65 miles an hour and even higher through Lynn Canal today. Gusts as high as 90 miles per hour were occurring on one of the islands up there. Looking at, there we go, satellite imagery. Low pressure here, mostly aloft, pulling off to the southeast, so rain and snow showers really tapered off, just about ended now by mid-afternoon today, Friday, over the southern panhandle, and then those winds on the increase here over the north areas, and generally clearing skies, but some cloudiness kind of lingering here, but clearing out off the coast, another patch of clouds here, and then mostly fair conditions to outright mostly sunny North Gulf Coast, Gulf of Alaska, right up to the eastern Arctic coast, and then all the moisture out here coming northward and then kind of spilling eastward and streaming off to the north. And we've got a lot of high stuff here over the western interior with some precipitation into the southwest coast as well as on up into the northwest, but amounts, I didn't see anything more than 1/10 of an inch, water equivalent at Nome, and also down at King Cove, but Falls Pass in the Alaska Peninsula. Those are the two heavier amounts. Everything else came in under that, with the exception of Adak there. That's being affected by a wetter, stronger system. They had about 1 1/3 inches of precipitation in the 12-hour period ending at 3 p.m. this afternoon. Also, gusts up to 50 miles an hour with that, and then snow showers out towards Shimia. Otherwise, rolling this through again, today's chart, we've got the snow and blowing snow, St. Lawrence Island, Yukon Delta, all the way up there to the northwest coast, and winds as high as 41 miles an hour peak wind gusts recorded at St. George. Red Dog, 65 miles an hour, and 67 miles an hour at Cape Lisburne. Again, that creating whiteout conditions and blowing snow there, but conditions improved dramatically just to the east here. High pressure, you can see, just dominates the eastern central interior as well as the panhandle into the Gulf of Alaska. And winds coming down now, Prince William Sound and the North Gulf Coast, but still quite high. Actually, we're on the increase today over the northern panhandle. Eldred Rock this afternoon, gusts 60 miles an hour, and Rocky Island had 80 mile an hour wind gusts. And then Little Island, a little further to the south, they had wind gusts to 90 miles per hour. And of course, high wind warnings out for that area through tonight and into tomorrow. A little bit of light precipitation here along the Alaska Peninsula to the Fox Islands at times. due to south to north flow here, but just a broad area of strong southerly winds here on the western side of this developing ridge aloft over the eastern interior, and then the low pressure out to the west. And for tonight, you can see high pressure sets up over the Gulf of Alaska, 1,042 millibar center over in the Yukon, but ridging to the west here and trying to build back to the west as this front kind of scoots up and off to the northeast there, and then this one slides up, and it's tending to pull back to the west. It's kind of undulating back and forth through the next several days with each passing wave that comes northward. So look for some continued precipitation here with gusty winds over the southwest coast, blowing snow from St. Lawrence Island, southern Seward Peninsula, through the Strait and up here over the northwest, about like what you saw today. Drying out here over Bristol Bay, showers the Alaska Peninsula. Maybe gale force winds and rain here in advance of this front from Nikolsky over to Atka on up to St. Paul and St. George. Colder air, snow showers following in behind, and no change here for the southeast coast. Clear, windy, strongest winds in the north, and temperatures on the chilly side, definitely probably below freezing, coldest in the wind-sheltered areas. And then for tomorrow, sunny skies here, southeast coast, Gulf of Alaska, all of southern Alaska here. You can see the moisture kind of pulls back to the west a little bit off the coast. In fact, the clouds just about clear Nunivak Island there. Look for some rain with a warm front for the Alaska Peninsula. Band of gusty winds right through here. Stays breezy over the southwest or the western interior, but not as windy as today. And it stays unsettled, definitely wet. Surges of warm air could mix that precipitation, or you could see some mixed precipitation here, even as far north as the Kobuk Valley, back out into the Chukchi Sea. And then a little bit of moisture might skiff the central Arctic coast, but that'll be pretty light. Partly sunny northeast interior. Snow showers, western Aleutians, and the next storm coming up brings gusty winds and rain into the Alaska Peninsula. That only doesn't move. Well, actually, that's another one that comes up, the one I just spoke of. This one takes off to the north and dissipates up and through here. Ridging tries to bulge back to the west there into the northern Bering Sea, but this whole mess gets shoved eastward here due to the strong storm that comes into the southwest of the Aleutians. So you can see that's a 956 millibar center and the tight pressure gradient ahead of that. Storm force winds, rain heavy at times coming up into the Aleutians and then back to the west there. And that's going to tend to push this weakening system in, try to shove it into the ridge there as the ridge holds here over the Gulf of Alaska, central eastern interior into the Yukon. So this is really going to get sheared apart with most of the energy slipping off to the north. So you can still see snow and blowing snow in the northwest. Not bad there for the eastern Arctic coast and Beaufort Sea. Less wind over the Panhandle with continued sunny skies. And from there, looking at the low temperatures for tonight, quite a contrast from west to east. Clear skies, light winds here under high pressure over the eastern interior versus strong continued mild southerly winds out to the west. So upper or mid 30s for the Pribilofs, lows around 40 for Unalaska. And then gradually cooling mid-20s Bristol Bay, in the 20s here over the southwest interior, and the 0-degree isotherm roughly from Kenai Soldotna northward, cutting through the Susitna Valley into just east of Tanana, and then back out to Wainwright there, and everything east of that, of course, will be below zero to as far as 16 below at Gulkana, and at Eagle, 21 below Northway, 20 to 25, maybe 20 to 30 below over the upper Yukon Valley on up in toward Arctic Village. And quite a range in temperatures here for the southeast coast, as it usually is with all that wind, anywhere from mid-teens to upper 20s. Highs tomorrow afternoon, lower 30s, maybe up to 35 Sitka. Otherwise, most areas below freezing for the Panhandle. Either side of zero here in the eastern interior, mid-30s. Kuskokwim Delta, upper 30s, lower 40s for the Alaska Peninsula, and just pushing above freezing there for Gamble. Mid-20s there on the central Arctic coast with the Aleutians out west. Chillier there in the cooler air, lower 30s for Shimia. And then your lows for Sunday morning. Not quite as cold here in the east, but still below zero from Gulkana all the way up into the eastern Brooks Range. 20s on the western Arctic coast for your low temperatures, mid to upper 20s here down to the south, and above freezing Kodiak Island, Alaska Peninsula. and that leads into your Sunday afternoon temperatures. Again, into the lower 40s over the Alaska Peninsula, near 40 central Aleutians on out to Shemya, and a little above freezing for the Pribilofs and Nunivak Island, a little below for St. Lawrence Island. You can see above freezing here for the Seward Peninsula, and teens in the east.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
On to the first flying weather graphic here. Huge area of IFR out over the Bering Sea, sliding up into the southwest coast, northward through the Bering Strait, and building along the southern slopes of the Brooks Range here for tomorrow morning. Another band up there right along the western Arctic coast. VFR south, VFR eastern Beaufort Sea coast, VFR Bristol Bay, eastward all the way across the Gulf and the southeast coast. And that holds through tomorrow, no change through here the southern areas, and just a little bit of marginal VFR up there over the eastern Brooks Range, and still a band areas of IFR western slopes of the Brooks Range, and then IFR continues through the Bering Strait, but not quite as widespread as it is in the morning, really narrowing out here as it comes down toward the Fox Islands. And then for us Sunday morning, still really not much change in the whole overall pattern. Big upper level high over the central eastern interior, southerly flow keeping that moisture heading northward and more or less in place there, kind of oscillating back and forth every 12 to 18 hours or so with each passing wave that comes northward. Marginal VFR, though, kind of slipping up into southern Cook Inlet and Kenai Peninsula, Kodiak, and IFR continues up to the Bering Strait. And then for the afternoon, that kind of slips eastward here. Again, a wave comes up, so the pattern sort of shifts eastward. And we've got areas of IFR here, nothing really widespread in that regard there in the west from the western Brooks Range along mountains all the way down to the Alaska Peninsula. VFR here, Gulf of Alaska Panhandle up to the Arctic coast. Next storm coming into the western Aleutians, or into the Aleutians with another band of IFR. Passes, Anatuvik, marginal VFR, same forecast for Adigan, marginal conditions. Possible IFR both passes, maybe, but definitely marginal. And for Lake Clark and Merrill, definitely VFR. Same forecast for rainy, VFR through the weekend, and windy VFR both tomorrow and Sunday. Isabel, same thing. Seedlings visibility is unlimited from Antasta, Tanita, and Portage, and Chilkoot and White. VFR right through Sunday. And for the freezing level chart here, again, pretty much the same tomorrow morning here with the surface line here right along the coast, and a little bit back toward the outer coastline of the Panhandle now, that colder offshore flow building. And here in the west, south to north flow, strong southerly flow tomorrow morning, 2,000 feet right up to St. Lawrence Island, 4,000 feet right on its heels with 6,000 feet down across the Alaska Peninsula. And that'll probably continue to advance northward into Sunday. And moving on to icing, definite zone here, considerable moderate rime icing above 6,000 feet, eastern Aleutians, the western Alaska Peninsula, on up to the Pribilofs, and then a continuous band of isolated or moderate to isolated rime icing here, mostly extending up to the northwest and the Russian Far East, but then that westerly flow coming over the top of the ridge. A couple of bands here coming eastward with up here over the northwest, western Brooks Range, another one there just clipping the central Arctic coast, icing free everywhere else. Jet stream, here's this really a tremendous ridge of high pressure developing the center, right over the Kenai Peninsula, Kodiak Island or so, but that's keeping the storminess here out to the west, sending it to the north. Every once in a while something tries to break through underneath, and then northerlies 100 knots here over the northern Panhandle, supporting that high wind warning there for Douglas Island and Juneau. Main jet here, or Pacific jet, south of the Aleutians, and moving on to 9,000 feet, high pressure at this elevation, just south of Prince William Sound, and then low pressure way back to the west there, but a pretty good flow here. Really strong winds, 65 to 70 knots across the peninsula right up to St. Lawrence Island, 55 through the Bering Strait, lighter to the east, westerlies 20 to 25 for the Aleutians, and northerlies 15 to 20, maybe 25 across the Panhandle, really light for the North Gulf Coast and Kodiak Island as well as the Gulf of Alaska. And at 3,000 feet, a little bit different pattern here, high pressure over the Yukon and into the Gulf, northeast 15 to 20 there across the southeast coast, and then south to southeast 50 to 55, maybe even 60 knots here. 65 knots just south of St. Lawrence Island, taking a turn off to the northeast there, 25 to 35 across the north, and a band of 25-knot winds there across the northern part of the upper Yukon Valley areas, and westerlies 25 there for the Aleutians. Turbulence, possible severe here below 5,000 feet for small aircraft, Alaska Peninsula, Nunivak Island, and the Bering Strait.
Welcome to another edition of Alaska Weather Facts. I'm meteorologist Dave Snider, and joining us once again is our good friend Eric Stevens from GINA, the Geographic Information Network of Alaska. Thanks again for joining us, Eric. We really appreciate it, as always.
Happy to be here, Dave.
Thanks. And, you know, we're going to ask you some more satellite questions here, but, you know,
Okay.
since you're a regular guest, we're going to give you a riddle this time, kind of a trick start to the show.
Okay.
How do you see a polar bear in a snowstorm?
Sounds like a challenging question because
Okay.
the polar bear is white and the snowstorm's white.
Yeah.
How do you do that? Well, in the world of satellite meteorology, you couldn't, because the spatial resolution of this instrument that we're going to talk about today has 375 meters resolution, and even the most well-fed polar bear will not be 375 meters across.
I'm okay with that.
Yeah, you wouldn't want to run into such a
No, it'd be a
creature,
bad day.
would you? In the satellite meteorology world, the equivalent would be, how do you tell the difference between clouds and then an area that has no clouds but's covered by snow,
Right.
a piece of ocean that has no clouds but has sea ice?
Oh.
All three of these are white. The
Right.
snow, the clouds, the sea ice, it's all white. So how, using satellite data, can you tell someone where the clouds are and where the clear areas are? This is important for aviators. Mariners want to know, in the ocean there, this white stuff, is that sea ice or is that just a cloud? How do we tell the difference? And it turns out, if you look, say, at a picture of Alaska from the springtime, March or April, and it's high noon, so we're getting a lot of sunshine. If you were riding on a satellite with your human eye, look down, everything's white.
Right.
And we've got a picture of Alaska from early April, and we're seeing some of the lower elevations in south central Alaska are melting out, getting some brown ground there, but otherwise there's a whole lot of white on the image. What areas are cloudy, but what areas are clear and covered by snow or ice? Okay. It turns out that if we leave the visible spectrum behind a little bit, see, a satellite has multiple channels in the electromagnetic spectrum that it can look at. Part of that's visible light, what we see as humans, but there's a lot going on at other wavelengths. If we add in something that's called near infrared, what we couldn't quite see, but we're getting into that infrared territory, there's a magical property that we can exploit.
Secrets to find. Okay.
Oh yeah. This is actually powerful and almost magical, that at a slightly longer wavelength, when the sun shines down on Alaska and then it bounces off back to the satellite, at that near infrared wavelength, it turns out that snow and ice will absorb that wavelength, but liquid water, like liquid droplets in a cloud, will reflect it back.
Okay.
And that's not the way it works in visible. You know, visible, it just bounces off of all those targets the same. But at near infrared, snow and ice absorbs it, and the liquid will reflect it back. Liquid cloud droplets will do that.
Okay.
And so an image where everything looks white suddenly becomes colorful. And the way this recipe works is that the clouds look pink, and the snow-covered ground and the ice-covered ocean look blue. Suddenly now, we're able to see the polar bear in the snowstorm. We're able to see where the clouds are and where the snow is and where the ice is. This is a powerful advantage. Consider the case zooming into the Bering Strait area. What if you were asked to brief a pilot who wanted to fly, say, from Kotzebue down to Savunga or Gamble, and had to fly VFR, visual flight rules, so they had to stay out of the clouds? Could you use a satellite image where everything is white to provide that pilot any guidance?
It'd be pretty tricky.
Very tricky. And that's why we have to go to this other recipe where the all-white polar bear in the snowstorm becomes more colorful. And now we can tell the pilot, aha, this is a cloud you want to stay out of, but over here, sure, it looks white in the visible spectrum, but what we're doing, we'll show you, oh, this is just snow-covered ground, but it's clear, so you can fly right through there, visual flight rules. Same thing for a mariner who might want to get down to St. Lawrence Island, say, but it has to avoid the sea ice. This product has applicability there as well.
Wonderful.
It's an amazing new technology, so many new channels The satellite that makes this imagery actually has 22 different channels that it looks at.
22 secret decoder rings.
22 secret decoder rings.
Okay. You know, I liken this to an activity I had in the car when I was growing up. We'd go on long car rides, and we'd do all the work in these activity books to, you know, stay calm, cool, and collected for our parents who were trying to get us across the state. But to get the answer, the real answer, you had to apply that red sheet to see the answer or the secret path or whatever the message was in that activity book to get you onto the next page. And it's also like a photography filter, right? If you're taking a lot of pictures, you can apply different colors to see different parts of that image. I mean, that sounds a lot like what you're talking about.
Oh, you know it. The information is in there all along. We just have to combine the channels in a way to reveal what's in there. And by the way, you're dating yourself. So you didn't have an iPad in the back of the car?
No, sir.
Okay. Well, we have, lastly, for dessert, there's a great image of the same kind of recipe. We're looking at South Central Alaska the first week of January. In first week of January, the sun, even at noon, is really low on the horizon, barely up. And in this image, the fun thing is the shadow of Dehne. We can see the shadow of Dehne over a lower pink cloud deck.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Dehne at 20,000 feet casts a big shadow. So this is another, just for fun, kind of application here. This is called multispectral satellite imagery, and it's the future. And happily, the future is now.
Oh, that is fascinating. And 22 different secrets that can be revealed from just one satellite tool that's floating overhead. Eric, thanks so much for joining us again. We can't wait to have you back and telling us more secrets of satellite technology that are passing over us every single day, many times a day, over Alaska and helping us all the way in many different parts of our lives. So thanks so much for joining us again.
Well, happy to be here.
All right. And thank you for staying with us. We'll be back with a little more weather here in just a few minutes. And of course, we'll have more Alaska weather facts anytime online.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back. Today's sea ice analysis, a little different from yesterday in that the ice edge is retreating northward or continuing, and in areas here with a strong south winds, and since those winds are going to continue for the next several days, the ice out here is expected to continue to advance northward also. So moving on to coastal water forecasts, northeasterly small craft advisory winds here on the south coast, 25 knots. Kicks up to 30 here before dropping back to 15 on the extreme north coast. Another windy one for Lynn Canal, north 45, north 30 for Stevens Passage, northeast 15, Clarence Strait. And for Sunday, 15 to 20 knot northeast winds on the south coast, north to northwest 10 to 15 on the north coast there. Lynn Canal edging down 30 knots out of the north, and interesting here, Stevens Passage, north 20, and they threw gust 50 in. So storm force winds there on Sunday. But Clarence Strait still light out of the north. And for Prince William Sound, light south winds at 10, seas not bad, 2 feet. And I'll call it variable 10 here for the North Gulf Coast, with seas running about 4 feet, southeast 15, Barren Islands. East 25 for Kamishak Bay, small craft advisories for Southern Cook Inlet, northeast 10 here, north of the Forelands. And for Sunday, no change up here. Northern Cook Inlet, northeast 20, Southern Cook Inlet, and small craft advisories, east 25. Kamishak Bay, southeast 20 for the Barrens. Still light winds here, west-northwest 10 to 15, North Gulf Coast, northwest at 10. And 2-foot seas continue for Prince William Sound. Kodiak Island, west-southwest 25 knots. Gales here from Sitkinak all the way down to Cape Sarachev, 35 to 40 knots, strongest south or down the coastline from Castle Cape. Southeast 40 on the Bering Sea side of the peninsula, and east at 30 for Bristol Bay. Those come down here, well actually they go up in Bristol Bay, got gales in the forecast for Sunday there, southeast 35, but come down to 25 knots here for the Alaska Peninsula. Southeast 30, Castle Cape to Sitkinak, back down to about 25 on the east side of Kodiak Island. And for the Aleutians out west, winds diminishing, southwest 25, and you pick up the gales about Amchitka Island, west 35 to 40 right across Atka Island, and then changing direction, speed still 35 to 40 knots for some gale force winds, but south to southeast. And then for Sunday, kind of a variable wind pattern here. On Alaska Island, you've got north 20 to 25 knots, and then near Nikolsky and to the west, southeast 30 knots, And then those pick up to, in some cases, storm force southeast winds for the central Aleutians, 50.5 knot southeast winds here from Adak over to Kiska, and then east 45. And for the southwest coast, southeast 40 knots tomorrow, southeast 40 for the Pueblos, southeast 45 for St. Matthew Island, southeast 40 for St. Lawrence Island. So a windy day for the Bering tomorrow. And that comes down, still southeast 40 here south of Nunivak Island, but north 15 for the Pueblos, southwest 25, St. Matthew Island, and gales continue for St. Lawrence Island into the Bering Strait. Eastern Beaufort Sea coast, basically south 20 to 25 knots, southwest 25, so brisk wind advisories here for most of the coastline with gales from Cape Beaufort on down to Wales, south 35 knots. And those gales continue through Sunday, south to southeast at 35, south 30 on the west side, and 25 central coast, south to southwest at 15 east side. And for tonight again, strong high pressure both at the surface, especially aloft, quite a tremendous ridge aloft building here centered over southern Alaska. So the flow around that is carrying this moisture in across the western North Slope, Brooks Range. We're in storm warnings back down to St. Lawrence Island tonight into tomorrow. Gusty winds, rain, Pueblos, Alaska Peninsula to the eastern Aleutians. High wind warning for the Juneau, Douglas, Admiralty Island area for continued gusts, 65 miles per hour. And that continues to about midday Saturday. And then should start to edge back a little bit. You can see a little bit less gradient across the area, especially north. By tomorrow afternoon, with high pressure continuing to dominate the Gulf of Alaska, southern areas here, and actually expands off the coast a little bit, pushing the clouds almost west of Nunivak Island and the precipitation almost west of St. Lawrence Island by afternoon, but that's streaming back into the northwest part of the state on more of a west-southwest upper flow aloft, but mostly cloudy over the eastern interior there. Next system not quite so strong, even weaker on Sunday, and then a big storm enters the Bering Sea.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.